The year is 1861, and a historically contentious election has just come to an end the past November, with the Republican candidate Abraham Lincoln emerging victorious. It would not be hyperbole to suggest that the nation had never been more divided before this time, and New Jersey was no exception. Being on the border of the Mason-Dixon line, with some of its southern counties actually beneath it, a sizable portion of New Jerseyans had both economic and political connections to southern states, and supported the continuation of slavery in the Union, even to the point that there was some discussion that New Jersey itself should consider seceding. New Jersey's 7 electoral votes were actually split 4-3, with Lincoln taking the majority despite not securing the popular vote in the state. This was due to the failed efforts of the Democrat ticket to secure what is called a fusion ticket. 3 different Democrats were put forth to challenge Lincoln, but Illinois Democrat Stephen Douglas's contingent, having more overall support in New Jersey while trailing nationwide behind Kentucky's Southern Democrat John Breckinridge, refused to fully go in on the fusion ticket, and so no single Democrat candidate attained more votes individually against Lincoln to overcome his support. It was in this fraught political climate that the state legislature asked Governor Charles S. Olden to invite President-elect Abraham Lincoln to New Jersey during his winding train journey from Illinois to Washington, D.C. for his inauguration on March 4th. Abraham Lincoln, perhaps sensing an opportunity to win over some support in the deeply divided state, accepted, and his train arrived in the state on February 21st, 1861. A call was sent out from Trenton for a coach to convey Lincoln from the Trenton train depot to the State House. James Buckalew offered up his finest coach for the president's use during his brief visit, and it was this coach that was selected, to be driven by Dent Miller, who was one of the best drivers from the Jamesburg Freehold stagecoach line that James Buckalew had established and run for a number of years. At the State House, Lincoln first gave a speech to the state Senate that largely focused on his admiration and respect for New Jersey's role in the Revolutionary War, and his determination to perpetuate the Union established through that struggle. Lincoln then moved on to give a speech to the more hostile branch, the General Assembly. As they awaited Abraham Lincoln's arrival, 3 resolutions were proposed that insulted Lincoln's looks and height, all of which were tabled, and a 4th resolution, that basically amounted to a threat to assault the president-elect when he entered the chamber, was ruled out of order. Lincoln's speech to this raucous crowd focused on his desire to navigate the emerging national crisis peacefully, but added that he was willing to put his foot down forcefully if the need arose to preserve the Union. This statement was met with loud cheering in spite of these divisions, foretelling New Jersey's ultimate decision to stay loyal to the Union in the Civil War that was mere months away. And now, here's Abraham Lincoln.
Mr. President and gentlemen of the Senate of the State of New Jersey, I am very grateful to you for the honorable reception of which I have been the object. I cannot but remember the place that New Jersey holds in our early history. In the early revolutionary struggle, few of the states among the old 13 had more of the battlefields of the country within their limits than old New Jersey. May I be pardoned if, upon this occasion, I mention that away back in my childhood, the earliest days of my being able to read, I got a hold of a small book, such a one as a few of the younger members have ever seen, Weem's Life of Washington. I remember all the accounts there given of the battlefields and the struggles for the liberty of the country, and none fixed themselves upon my imagination so deeply as the struggle here at Trenton, New Jersey, the crossing of the river, the contest with the Hessians, the great hardships endured at the time, all fixed themselves on my memory more than any single revolutionary event. And you all know, for you all have been boys, how these early impressions last longer than any others. I recollect thinking then, boy even though I was, that there must have been something more than common that those men struggled for. That something even more than national independence. That something held out a great promise to all the people of the world, to all time to come. I'm exceedingly anxious that this Union, the Constitution, and the liberties of the people shall be perpetuated in accordance with the original idea for which that struggle was made, and I shall be most happy indeed if I shall be a humble instrument in the hands of the Almighty, and of this, his almost chosen people, for perpetuating the object of that great struggle. You give me this reception, as I understand, without the distinction of party. I learn that this body is composed of a majority of gentlemen who, in the exercise of their best judgment in the choice of chief magistrate, did not think I was the man. I understand, nevertheless, that they came forward here to greet me as the constitutional President of the United States, as citizens of the United States, to meet the man who, for the time being, is the representative man of the nation, united by a purpose to perpetuate the union and liberties of the people. As such, I accept this reception more gratefully than I could do did I believe it was tendered to me as an individual. Mr. Speaker and gentlemen, I've just enjoyed the honor of a reception by the other branch of this legislature, and I return to you and them many thanks for the reception which the people of New Jersey have given, through their chosen representatives, to me as the representative, for the time being, of the majesty of the people of the United States. I appropriate to myself very little of the demonstrations of respect with which I have been greeted. I think little should be given to any man, but that it should be a manifestation of adherence to the Union and the Constitution. I understand myself to be received here by the representatives of the people of New Jersey, a majority of whom differ in opinion from those with whom I have acted. This manifestation is therefore to be regarded, Mr. Speaker, regarded by me as expressing their devotion to the Union, the Constitution, and the liberties of the people. You, Mr. Speaker, have well said that it is a time when the bravest and wisest look with doubt and awe upon the aspect presented by our national affairs. Under these circumstances, you will readily see why I should not speak in detail of the course I shall deem it best to pursue. It is proper that I should avail myself of the information and all the time at my command, in order that when the time arrives in which I must speak officially, I shall be able to take the ground which I deem the best and safest, and from which I may have no occasion to swerve. I shall endeavor to take the ground I deem most just to the north, the east, the west, the south, and the whole country. I take it, I hope, in good temper, certainly no malice toward any section. I shall do all that may be in my power to promote a peaceful settlement of all our difficulties. The man does not live who is more devoted to peace than I am, none who would do more to preserve it. But it may be necessary to put the foot down firmly. And if I do my duty and do right, you will sustain me, will you not? Received as I am by the members of a legislature, the majority of whom do not agree with me in political sentiments, I trust that I may have their assistance in piloting the ship of state through this voyage, surrounded by perils as it is, for if it should suffer attack now, there will be no pilot ever needed for another voyage. Gentlemen, I have already spoken longer than I intended and must beg leave to stop here.
The coach continued being used by the Buckaloos after Lincoln's visit, but with the invention of the automobile in the 1890s and their increasingly common usage in the new century, by 1910 coaches fell out of favor. Luckily, this particular coach, likely due to its link to the 16th president, was preserved. It could be seen for many years leading Memorial Day parades and at events, while going through many different homes in Chambersburg, from Borough Hall to the fire department to a feed and grain depot. After the depot was abandoned, the coach languished there for a few years before being moved to a local farmer's barn. It was around this time that the borough determined they could no longer offer a proper home for it, and was transferred to the State Home for Boys, who ultimately transferred ownership to the Historical Association of Trenton, where it ultimately disappeared from view. There were multiple sightings of it in the ensuing years. Oliver Soden saw it sitting in rough shape in a yard of what he referred to as a monkey and birdhouse in Cadwallader Park in Trenton, but it disappeared again until Abe Reynolds saw it in a pasture in Flemington. The recently formed Jamesburg Historical Association, most notably Abe Reynolds, Bob Mendoker, and Oliver Soden, then successfully negotiated a deal with the Trenton Historical Association, who still owned the coach, for its return to Jamesburg, where the Jamesburg Historical Association would take ownership and have it restored in exchange for its loan to Trenton for any parades or celebrations, ultimately being used just once to celebrate Trenton's birthday. It found a temporary home at the then new firehouse on West Railroad Avenue until the town and the association acquired Lakeview Mansion, where it has been kept ever since in the conservatory.